What's going on YouTube? This is your boy Chef with Quest for Game. Today we're gonna look at the top 4 deck list of the Lorcana challenge that happened in Chicago. Now, this is a very important event because this is the first large scale event for set 4. So with this, we'll be able to look at what the meta trends are and we can hopefully figure out how to beat them. So stay tuned, let's go over it. All right, so let's get right on into it. We have the Emerald Steel first place winner. We all knew that Emerald Steel was going to be the best deck going into the format. So a lot of decks that entered this challenge, they had to be able to win against this deck, which meant that they had to have a lot of early game removal and a lot of ways to close out the game and take out Diablo and Bucky and everything. So most of this list is not a surprise. There are a few that are different than the list that most people have been playing through a lot of the larger tournaments that have been going on prior to this. Because the Flynn Riders here, that package has always been kind of thought about, but a lot of people weren't playing it before, but I could see why it works in this one because Emerald Steel can discard you pretty early and gain card advantage. But what the problem with the deck was, it couldn't close out games fast enough. So Flynn Rider basically is the solve for that. Plus it's a shift 2. So that means you can get it out on turn 3 easy if you have Bucky and start the discarding process, which in my opinion is actually pretty cool. The crazy thing about this, if you go first turn Flynn Rider, second turn Bucky, and then third turn you summon Diablo, the little Diablo, and shift 2, then pitch any kind of action card to shift Big Diablo, you just discarded 2 cards from your opponent all in one turn. So I can see that becoming a big issue and a lot of people building this deck. I'm glad to see Ursula is back in here, the singer. Some people were cutting those, but with Sudden Chills, Let Storm Rage on, Strength the Raging Fire, that's just a good card for control reasons, because if the deck can't get rid of cards on the board, it can definitely lose. Aladdin's still in here, Jafar's still in here, of course. You have Robin Hood and Beast, those make sense. All the good Floodborn characters for Steel, and even some from Emerald that more included that weren't before. Sudden Chill is a 3 of, Kaboom, I'm assuming that was in there to take care of the mirror match because it's a one shot for Diablo. Everything else looks standard. I know the Hidden Cove has been in like a new tech, and the reason that people are playing this is due to the fact that Diablo is a 2/2, so things like Brawl can take it out, the large Sisu can take it out. But if you have Diablo here, it will be resistant to those cards because it will now have 3 attack, which means Brawl can no longer take it out, Sisu can no longer take it out. Also means it can eat 1 grab your swords before it dies. So Hidden Cove is actually a pretty decent tech. I think from going forward, you're gonna start seeing that because everyone's gonna be trying to beat this deck. But overall, very good deck. I can see why it won, and it has some innovative techs in here that well deserved. So what is it, Brian Cortade or Cortad, however you pronounce that, he did a great job. All right, going on to the next deck, we have Amethyst Emerald. This deck, I'm starting to feel like this is the go-to deck at the start of a format every time, because I remember the start of set 3, this deck was also one of the best decks and was pretty oppressive at first because people weren't ready for it. And I think the reason for it is if you're new into a format and decks haven't been optimized yet, when you start attacking Curse Merfolk, Flynn Rider, and you just start getting your cards discarded, it kind of ruins your strategy that might not have been optimized anyways for a format that's unfigured out yet. So this deck essentially will beat you by making your deck worse and then outdrawing you. Now, most of this is similar to set 3. You were even seeing Cloud Kicker back, which we haven't seen in quite some time. Now, Jacques is pretty cool. When you play this character, chosen opposing character gains Reckless during their turn, and that is a great tech for Diablo because you give Diablo Reckless, they can't exert it, which means they will not get the draw. Now, there's 2 ways of going about this. You give them Reckless, and then you exert something big that Diablo has to crash into, or you bounce it back and give it Reckless again, so it could just essentially doesn't exert unless they sing a song. That is actually pretty cool tech. That is really good. Then we have, of course, the Merlin Rabbit, Merlin Goat, that's standard. Tinkerbell, Pegasus, Large Pegasus, which I noticed in the last build there wasn't a Pegasus. That was the first Emerald Steel deck that I saw that did not have a Pegasus. Now, Big Ursula, the 7-drop, I'm hearing that this on stream made quite a splash. Ursula the Sea Witch Queen. This can be shifted on the 2-drop Ursula on turn 5, so that's really cool. But the main thing is whenever this character quests, you get to exert a chosen character. So you might be able to get over something that they're not trying to exert. Like, let's say like a Merlin Rabbit, right? They're not going to exert that as often because unless they're going to bounce it back because they just want to keep getting the card draw. But overall, this is a newer card that people weren't sure about, but I'm sure people are going to start trying more often because, I mean, it worked in the 2nd place deck list. So that's really cool. Friends, Mother Knows Best, and then Queen Scout. So yeah, that's pretty standard. Pretty good counter for the meta, I must say. We'll see if this carries forward, if it's going to be like last format where it just kind of fades out after the first few months. We'll see. But yeah, this is definitely something we have to try soon. All right, 3rd place deck list, Ruby Amethyst. Now, prior to this, Ruby Amethyst was the most times the best deck in the room. Now, towards the end of set 3, it started to fade off. And now at set 4, it seems like a lot of other colors are balanced where this is no longer the best deck. In fact, if anything, it's kind of gotten more and more unpredictable and if it can even take certain matchups. But overall, this is a pretty good build. It's mostly focused on drawing because you have both 1-drops that draw you a card. You have a 2-drop that draws you a card, and then the rest of the draw engine. But the main difference with this from last set is you have Flynn Riders with Sisu. So if your opponent has cards in their hand, this is going to go up for every card in their hand. So that means Flynn Rider is just always going to be going off, and they have to figure out a way to out Sisu. Brawl going forward is probably one of the most important cards in any Ruby deck because this will get rid of a lot of problematic cards like Diablo and things that aren't going to be exerted, because most things that aren't exerted have smaller willpowers because, you know, their effects are usually pretty good. So moving forward, I think Brawl is going to be a 4 of in most Ruby decks. It's just a great card. Now, I noticed that this one has the Bee King Undisputed at 3 and Be Prepared at 3. So a lot of decks that I've seen, they play 2 of the Undisputed and then 4 Be Prepareds, or some of them 2 to 3 Be Prepareds, depending. I guess people are cutting down on them because they are tired of getting them sniped with Ursula. That's pretty interesting. The Undisputed, it's pretty good. I mean, there's quite a few good cards to help with the Emerald matchup. And they have, see, 3, 6, 8, 12 Uninkables. So the Uninkable count is actually fairly low for a purple-red deck, which might explain why they got to top 4 due to the fact that they weren't getting those hands that red-purple gets where you just nothing but Uninkables. But overall, a really good control deck for the meta. I'm sure this is going to evolve even further and probably move up on the ranks to be just a better overall deck, but pretty good job here. All right, so we're looking at the last deck list. Surprise, surprise, Ruby Sapphire ends up taking 4th. Now, with this, I know that the end of set 4, this deck started to fall off due to consistency issues. Decks were becoming too fast, and this deck would just lose early to mid game before they even get to late game. Now that Emerald Steel took over, it's not a fast-paced deck. At least it wasn't prior. After this challenge, however, I think it's going to be a lot. Emerald Steel is going to be a lot faster because now they're playing Flynn Rider, which means that they're going to close out the game much quicker than they did. I like how this deck kind of mimics what we figured out was that Ruby Sapphire absolutely has to have early game control. So what that means is in the beginning of the game, they have to essentially keep blowing up cards with stuff like Brawl, control the board with Madame Medusa's, Sisu's, Be Prepared's, Maleficent's, everything. So you just basically got to throw everything at you until you run out of resources, and then they close out the game with Lucky Dime. Prior to that, this deck didn't have that ability, but now with set 4 being introduced, you have cards like Brawl. Now you have cards like Sisu. In combination with Be Prepared and Maleficent, now you have a complete suite of removal cards to usher you into late game to close it out. I like how this one's playing the Great Stone Dragon. A lot of them stopped playing this in the beginning. They liked it and then they just cut it. Fishbone at 3 is also interesting. Usually that's a 4 of. Ice Block at 2, another 4 of a lot of the times, but Ice Block is kind of wonky, so I can see why they only have 2 of them. How Far Ago, love this card. I'm glad to see that it's making some strides in the game. One Jump Ahead, of course, that's a 4 of in pretty much every Sapphire deck. Everything else here looks pretty standard. I love the Grandma Tala 4-drop. But overall, this deck, I could see why it made it to the top. It's very balanced, incredibly balanced. Definitely might give this a shot on the channel in the next couple days. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the Lorcana Challenge Meta Report. If you like videos like this, please subscribe below and comment what kind of things you would like to see from us in the future. But yeah, thanks for watching, and you guys have a great day.